The silver ship moved slowly through space toward the massive planet below. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the window, watching the green and purple world grow larger. 3 years of war had brought her here, to the heart of enemy territory, carrying humanity's last hope for peace. Elena wore a simple blue diplomatic uniform. She was a tall woman with gray hair and tired eyes. The weight of millions of human lives rested on her shoulders. Behind her, the ship's crew worked quietly, preparing for what everyone hoped would be the end of the bloodshed. The Zephyrian Empire controlled half the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved entire species. Humans had been fighting them for 3 long years, ever since first contact went wrong. Human colonies on the frontier had been burning ever since. Elena's ship, the Harmony's Edge, was built for peace missions. It carried no heavy weapons, just basic shields and a small crew. The message was clear. Humanity came in peace, not war. The planet below was Zephyr Prime, capital of an empire that stretched across 1,000 star systems. Cities covered the surface like scars, connected by rivers of light. Massive ships moved in and out of orbit, each one big enough to destroy a human colony. Elena touched the datapad in her pocket. It contained humanity's peace offer, written in careful diplomatic language. The terms were generous, perhaps too generous. Complete human withdrawal from all disputed star systems. Massive payments to cover war damages. Even sharing of human technology, including their breakthrough quantum drive engines that many on Earth thought the offer gave away too much. The military leaders wanted to keep fighting. They said humans were tough, that they could win if they tried hard enough. But Elena had seen the casualty reports. 50 human worlds had gone dark in the past year alone. Millions were dead or missing. The CUM system crackled to life. A harsh voice filled the bridge, speaking in the growling language of the Zephyrians. The translation came a moment later. Human vessel, you will follow our escort ships. Any deviation from the flight path will result in immediate destruction. Do not test our patience. Elena nodded to her captain, a young man named Chun who looked nervous. This was his first diplomatic mission, and it showed. His hand shook slightly as he acknowledged the transmission. 6 Zephyrian warships appeared around them, each one bristling with weapons. They were sleek and dangerous, painted in the dark red colors of the Empire. Elena had studied their designs during the trip here. Each ship could destroy her diplomatic vessel without effort. The flight down to the planet's surface took an hour. Elena spent the time reviewing her speech one last time. Every word had been chosen carefully. She needed to sound confident but not threatening, humble but not weak. It was a difficult balance. The landing pad was enormous, designed to handle the massive Zephyrian warships. Elena's small ship looked tiny by comparison. As they landed, she could see crowds of aliens watching from balconies above. Most looked curious, but some seemed angry. Zephyrians were impressive creatures. They stood 8 feet tall on average, with thick gray skin and powerful muscles. Their heads were elongated, with sharp teeth and bright yellow eyes. They had evolved as hunters on a harsh world, and it showed in every movement. Elena walked down the landing ramp with only 2 guards beside her. Protocol demanded she bring protection, but she wanted to show trust. The Zephyrian escort was waiting, a dozen soldiers in black armor carrying energy weapons. The escort leader was a massive Zephyrian with scars covering his face. He looked Elena up and down with obvious disgust. To him, humans probably looked weak and small. Elena was used to such reactions by now. They traveled through the city in a convoy of armored vehicles. Elena watched the streets through bulletproof glass. Zephyrian civilians went about their daily business, but she noticed something disturbing. Scattered among them were members of other species, clearly slaves. They wore simple clothing and kept their heads down, avoiding eye contact with their masters. The palace complex was massive, built from dark stone that seemed to absorb light. Statues of Zephyrian warriors lined the entrance, each one holding the severed head of a different alien species. Elena recognized some of them from intelligence reports. The Kethrins had been wiped out 50 years ago. The Mollis people had surrendered 60 years back and vanished from history. Inside the palace, the walls were covered with trophies. Weapons from conquered worlds, art stolen from dead civilizations, and worse things that Elena tried not to look at too closely. The message was clear. This was what happened to those who opposed the Empire. The throne room was the size of a human city block. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, supported by pillars carved to look like twisted trees. At the far end sat High Dominator Krext, on a throne made from the bones of some massive creature Elena didn't recognize. Krext H was enormous, even by Zephyrian standards. Nearly 10 feet tall and built like a mountain. His skin bore the ritual scars of a war leader, and his eyes glowed with intelligence and cruelty. Around him stood his war council, each one a veteran of countless campaigns. Elena walked the length of the throne room in silence, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. She could feel hundreds of eyes watching her, measuring her, finding her wanting. When she reached the throne, she bowed slightly, just enough to show respect without appearing weak. "High Dominator Krext," she began, her voice carrying clearly in the silence. "I come as a representative of humanity, seeking an end to the conflict between our peoples. We offer peace, cooperation, and mutual benefit for both our species." Krext leaned forward slightly, his massive hands gripping the arms of his throne. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. "Human," he said, making the words sound like a curse. "You come before the throne of the Zephyrian Empire, bearing words of submission. Speak your offer, and we will decide if your species deserves to continue existing." Elena kept her expression neutral despite the insult. She had expected this kind of reception. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the datapad containing humanity's peace proposal. "We offer complete withdrawal from all disputed territories," she began. "We will provide reparations for damages caused during the conflict. We also offer to share our quantum drive technology and establish trade agreements beneficial to both our peoples." The War Council exchanged glances, some looking surprised at the generous terms. But Krexith's expression didn't change. He gestured to one of his advisors, who came forward to take the datapad. Elena waited as they reviewed the proposal. Around her, she could hear the whispers of the Zephyrian court. Some seemed pleased by what they were hearing. Others looked disappointed, as if they had been hoping for continued war. The review took nearly an hour. Elena stood perfectly still, showing no signs of fatigue or nervousness. She had learned long ago that showing weakness in front of predators was a mistake. Finally, Krext raised one massive hand for silence. "Your proposal has been reviewed," he announced. "We will give you our response tomorrow. Until then, you will remain as our guest in the palace. Do not mistake this hospitality for weakness, human. The Empire's decision will be final." Elena bowed again and was escorted from the throne room. As she walked away, she could feel Krexith's burning into her back. Tomorrow would bring either peace or the continuation of a war that was slowly destroying both their peoples. She had done everything she could. Now all she could do was wait and hope that wisdom would prevail over pride. Elena spent the night in a guest chamber that was more prison than room. The walls were thick stone, and guards stood outside her door. She didn't mind. She had expected such treatment. What mattered was that the Zephyrians were considering her proposal. She slept poorly, dreaming of burning colonies and the faces of the dead. The war had taken so much from humanity. Entire worlds had been reduced to ash and silence. Children who would never grow up, families torn apart, Dreams destroyed by Zephyrian weapons that morning came with a sharp knock on her door. A Zephyrian guard entered, his armor gleaming in the artificial light. He said nothing, just gestured for Elena to follow. The time had come for their answer. The throne room was packed with Zephyrian nobles and military officers. Word had spread throughout the capital that the Empire would give its response to the human peace offer. Elena could feel the excitement in the air, like predators waiting for their prey to be released. High Dominator Krext Edge sat on his throne, looking even larger and more intimidating than before. His war council stood beside him, their faces showing barely controlled hunger for violence. Elena walked to the center of the room and waited. "Human," Krext began, his voice echoing off the walls. "We have considered your proposal. Your offer to retreat from our territory is acceptable, as it acknowledges our superiority. Your reparations are adequate, though small payment for the trouble you have caused us." Elena felt a spark of hope. Perhaps they would accept peace after all. Perhaps the killing could finally stop. "However," Krex continued, and Elena's heart sank, "your proposal assumes that humans and Zephyrians can exist as equals. This is incorrect. There can be only one dominant species in this galaxy, and that species is us." The High Dominator stood from his throne, his massive form towering over everyone in the room. "We counter-propose the following terms. All human worlds will become vassals of the Zephyrian Empire. All humans will serve as laborers and servants to their Zephyrian masters. Your children will be taken from birth and raised as warriors in our armies, their human weakness bred out through discipline." Elena's hands clenched into fists at her sides, but she kept her face neutral. Around her, the Zephyrian nobles were laughing and growling their approval. This was what they had wanted all along. Not peace, but total domination. "Furthermore," Krex said, raising his voice over the noise, "any human who resists these terms will be executed along with their entire family. Your species exists now only because we allow it. You should be grateful for our mercy." Elena took a deep breath before responding. "High Dominator, these terms are not acceptable to humanity. We came here seeking peace between equals, not surrender. Perhaps we could discuss a middle ground that serves both our peoples." Krexith's laugh was like the sound of breaking stone. "Middle ground? You misunderstand your position, human. This is not a negotiation. This is us telling you how things will be. You have no choice in the matter." The High Dominator gestured to one of his advisors, who brought forward a datapad. "Perhaps this will help you understand your situation better." The advisor activated the device, and a holographic display appeared in the air above Elena's head. What she saw made her blood run cold. It was a recording from Kepler 442b, one of humanity's newest colonies. The recording showed a peaceful human settlement, families going about their daily lives. Children playing in parks, workers tending crops, people building a new world together. Elena recognized some of the faces. Her own daughter Maria lived there with her husband and their young son. Then the Zephyrian ships appeared in the sky. What followed was not war. It was slaughter. The Zephyrian soldiers didn't target military installations or government buildings. They targeted schools, hospitals, and homes. Elena watched in horror as energy beams turned the playground where her grandson played into melted slag. The recording showed humans trying to surrender, waving white flags and calling for mercy. The Zephyrians ignored them all. Men, women, children, elderly people, none were spared. The soldiers seemed to enjoy their work, laughing as they cut down families trying to flee. Elena saw her daughter running with her husband and son, trying to reach an evacuation ship. A Zephyrian warrior caught them in the street. The alien took his time, making the death slow and painful. Elena watched her family die while Zephyrian soldiers cheered. 50,000 humans lived on that colony, Krex said calmly, watching Elena's face for a reaction. All dead now. This was done 3 days ago, while you traveled here with your pathetic peace offer. We wanted you to understand what happens to humans who think they can bargain with their betters. Elena's vision blurred with rage and grief, but she forced herself to keep watching. The recording showed the aftermath of the massacre. Zephyrian soldiers piled human bodies like firewood and set them ablaze. They laughed as they worked, taking pictures with their victims. Your daughter's head will look excellent mounted in our trophy hall, Krext added with casual cruelty. Her child's skull will make a fine drinking cup. This is the fate of all humans who resist the Empire. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, feeling something fundamental break inside her. When she opened them again, her expression was completely calm. The change was so sudden that even some of the Zephyrians noticed. The laughter in the throne room began to fade. I see, Elena said quietly. Thank you for clarifying the Empire's position, High Dominator. You have been very clear about what you want and what you are willing to do to get it. Elena reached into her pocket and pulled out a small communication device. I would like to transmit your response to my government, if that is acceptable. They should hear your terms directly. Krext waved dismissively. Of course. Let your leaders hear how powerless they are. Let them understand that surrender is their only option. Elena activated the device and spoke in a calm, professional voice. This is Ambassador Vasquez to Earth Command. Peace negotiations have concluded. The Zephyrian Empire has rejected all diplomatic solutions and made their intentions clear. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol Omega. Authorization code Vasquez 77 Alpha. She ended the transmission and put the device back in her pocket. Around her, the Zephyrians were murmuring among themselves, trying to figure out what Protocol Omega meant. Krext looked unconcerned. What is this Protocol Omega? The High Dominator asked. Some final plea for mercy? Another useless human gesture? Elena looked up at him with eyes that seemed suddenly ancient and cold. No, your dominance. Protocol Omega is what happens when humanity stops trying to be civilized. It's what we become when someone takes everything from us and laughs about it. She paused, letting her words sink in. You wanted to know what humans are capable of when we're pushed beyond our limits. You're about to find out. Krexith leaned forward on his throne, suddenly interested. Are you threatening us, little human? Do you think your pathetic species can challenge the might of the Empire? Elena smiled, and something in that expression made several Zephyrian warriors step back instinctively. I'm not threatening you, High Dominator. Threats are for diplomats, and diplomacy is over. I'm simply informing you that you've made a choice. And choices have consequences. You see, Elena continued, her voice growing colder with each word. I wasn't just a diplomat before this war started. I was Admiral Elena Vasquez, architect of humanity's most successful military campaigns. I designed our defensive strategies, our weapon systems, and yes, our contingency plans for situations exactly like this one. The throne room had gone completely silent now. Even Krext was paying attention. Protocol Omega isn't a plea for mercy, Elena explained. It's authorization for humanity to stop holding back. For 3 years, we've been fighting you with one hand tied behind our backs, trying to minimize casualties and preserve the possibility of peace. You've just made it clear that peace isn't possible. Elena began walking toward the exit, her guards moving to follow her. You wanted to show me what monsters look like, she called back to Krext. Thank you for the lesson. Now let me show you what monsters look like when they're human. As she reached the throne room doors, Elena turned back one final time. Oh, and High Dominator? You might want to check on your border worlds. You'll find that my diplomatic escort ships weren't quite what they seemed to be. The massive doors closed behind her with a sound like thunder, leaving the Zephyrian court in stunned silence. Outside, Elena walked calmly toward her ship while across the galaxy. Humanity's true nature was about to be revealed. The age of mercy was over. The age of fury had begun. Elena walked through the palace corridors with steady steps, ignoring the Zephyrian guards who followed her. Behind her, she could hear shouting from the throne room as Krex demanded explanations about protocol. Omega. They would understand soon enough. Her ship, the Harmony's Edge, waited on the landing pad exactly where she had left it. But as Elena approached, subtle changes became visible to those who knew what to look for. Panels that had appeared to be simple hull plating were sliding open, revealing hidden weapon ports. The diplomatic vessel was shedding its peaceful disguise. Captain Chen met her at the boarding ramp, his nervous expression replaced by grim determination. "Admiral," he said, using her old military rank instead of her diplomatic title. "All systems are ready. The package has been delivered to every target world." Elena nodded and stepped aboard. Around her, the ship's crew was moving with practiced efficiency, transforming their vessel from a diplomatic transport to a warship. What the Zephyrians had seen as a harmless peace mission was actually the most dangerous trap in human military history. "Time to target worlds?" Elena asked as they reached the bridge. 18 minutes until simultaneous activation," Chen replied, checking his instruments. "All escort ships are in position and ready to deploy." Elena took her place at the command station and activated the ship's communication array. Across Zephyrian space, her voice would soon reach every corner of the Empire. "This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the Human Federation," she began, her words carrying to dozens of star systems. "For 3 years, humanity has fought a defensive war against the Zephyrian Empire. We have tried diplomacy. We have offered peace. We have shown restraint and mercy." On the screens around her, Elena could see real-time images from across the galaxy. Human ships that had posed as merchant vessels and diplomatic escorts were now revealing their true nature. Cargo bays opened to release clouds of small, dark objects that spread quickly through space. "Today, the Zephyrian Empire chose to reject peace," Elena continued. "They chose to slaughter innocent civilians, including children. They chose to mock human suffering and demand our total surrender. They have shown us what they truly are." The dark objects were hunter-killer drones, each one no bigger than a human fist but packed with advanced technology. They moved through space like schools of deadly fish, seeking their targets with ruthless precision. "The Empire believes that humans are weak because we prefer peace to war," Elena said. "They are about to learn the difference between choosing not to fight and being unable to fight." The first targets were Zephyrian communication satellites and defense platforms. The hunter-killers swarmed over them like insects, cutting through armor with focused energy beams. Within minutes, the Empire's ability to coordinate between worlds was being systematically destroyed. On Zephyr Prime, alarm sirens began wailing as the first reports came in. Elena could see the confusion spreading through the capital as military commanders tried to understand what was happening. Their communication networks were failing, their defense systems going dark one by one. Each of those escort ships carried a full complement of hunter-killer swarms, Elena explained to her audience. Self-replicating, self-repairing, and programmed with one simple mission: destroy every Zephyrian military asset they can find. But the drones were only the beginning. As Elena spoke, other systems were activating across the Empire. Computer viruses that had been hiding in seemingly innocent trade data were now spreading through Zephyrian networks. These weren't simple destructive programs, but sophisticated entities designed to turn the Empire's own technology against itself. "We also shared some of our computer technology during our trade negotiations," Elena said with cold satisfaction. "Your people seemed very interested in our quantum processing systems. I hope you enjoyed studying them." On dozens of worlds, Zephyrian defense computers suddenly began targeting their own ships. Orbital weapons platforms turned their guns on the very facilities they were meant to protect. The Empire's technological superiority was becoming its weakness as human. Viruses corrupted their most advanced systems. Alana's ship shuddered as it lifted off from the landing pad. Through the viewports, she could see chaos spreading through the capital city. Zephyrian aircraft were crashing as their navigation systems failed. Ground vehicles sat dead in the streets as their power systems were infected by human malware. "But we saved the best for last," Elena announced, her voice now reaching every corner of the galaxy. "Something we call Terran fire." From her ship's cargo bay, a single canister was launched toward Zephyr Prime's surface. It looked harmless enough, just a simple metal cylinder. But as it struck the ground near the palace, something extraordinary happened. A brilliant white flame erupted from the impact point, spreading outward in a perfect circle. Whatever it touched simply vanished, consumed by a reaction that burned at temperatures beyond anything known to galactic science. The flame moved slowly but steadily, and nothing seemed able to stop it. Terran fire is a self-sustaining plasma reaction, Elena explained as she watched the white flames consume the palace where she had been humiliated hours before. It feeds on any form of matter, converting it directly to energy. Once started, it cannot be stopped until it runs out of fuel. The Zephyrian Emperor's throne room, with its trophies from conquered worlds, disappeared into the white fire. The bones that made up Krex's throne were consumed in seconds. The mounted heads of defeated alien diplomats burned away to nothing. Across the galaxy, similar fires were starting on every major Zephyrian world. Each one targeted symbols of the Empire's power. Military academies, government buildings, monuments to their conquests. The fires burned slowly enough that people could evacuate, but fast enough that entire installations were being consumed within hours. "This is not conquest," Elena said, as reports poured in from across the Empire. "This is justice. For every human child you murdered, a symbol of your empire burns. For every colony you destroyed, one of your worlds loses its ability to make war." The Harmony's edge was now fully transformed into its warship configuration. Hidden armor plating had emerged from concealment, weapon systems were online, and the ship's true size was revealed to be nearly twice what it had appeared during the diplomatic mission. Elena stood at the main viewer, watching the fire spread through Zephyr Prime's capital. In the distance, she could see Zephyrian ships trying desperately to escape the planet. Some made it to orbit before their systems were compromised by human viruses. Others fell from the sky as their engines failed. "The age of Zephyrian expansion is over," she announced to the galaxy. "Your empire built its power on the suffering of others. You celebrated cruelty and mocked mercy. You made the mistake of believing that those who choose peace are incapable of war." A new voice crackled over the communication system. It was High Dominator Krext, broadcasting from an emergency bunker somewhere beneath the burning capital. "Human," he roared, his voice filled with rage and confusion. "What is this madness? How dare you attack the Empire? We are the masters of this galaxy." Elena's expression didn't change as she responded. "You are the masters, High Dominator. Past tense. Your reign ended the moment you decided to murder my daughter and laugh about it. This is treachery," Krexit screamed. "You came here under a flag of peace. Diplomats are protected by galactic law." "Galactic law?" Elena repeated, her voice dripping with ice. "Like the law that protects civilian colonies from military attack? Like the law that forbids targeting children? You broke every law of civilized warfare and expected us to still follow the rules." The white fires were spreading faster now, consuming entire city blocks. Elena could see Zephyrian civilians fleeing in panic, their world burning around them. She felt no satisfaction in their fear, but no pity either. They had cheered when human children died. Now they could experience terror for themselves. We gave you every chance to choose honor, Elena continued. We offered you peace, prosperity, and cooperation. Instead, you chose to show us what evil looks like. So we decided to show you what happens when good people stop being gentle. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy now. The Zephyrian Empire's military was collapsing under the coordinated assault. Their communication networks were down, their defense systems corrupted, and their ships falling from the sky like burning leaves. Elena activated her ship's tactical display, showing the real-time status of the operation. Red dots marked Zephyrian military assets being destroyed. Blue dots showed human forces moving into position. Green indicators tracked the spread of the plasma fires. This is Admiral Vasquez to all human forces, she broadcast on a secure channel. Phase 1 is complete. Begin Phase 2 immediately. Liberation operations are now authorized. Across the galaxy, human ships that had been hiding in the outer regions of star systems began moving toward populated worlds. But these weren't invasion fleets. They carried supplies, medical equipment, and something the galaxy hadn't seen in decades: liberation forces. To the enslaved peoples of the galaxy, Elena announced on all frequencies, humanity remembers what freedom looks like. We are coming to remind you. The trap was fully sprung now. What had appeared to be a failed diplomatic mission was actually the opening move in the most. The Harmony's edge cut through space like a blade, leading a growing fleet of human vessels toward the burning remains of Zephyr Prime. Around Elena's command ship, dozens of other vessels emerged from hiding places throughout the system. What had seemed like a small diplomatic mission was revealing itself as a massive military operation. Elena stood on the bridge, watching tactical displays that showed the systematic destruction of Zephyrian power across 36 worlds. The hunter-killer swarms were performing exactly as designed, seeking out military targets with ruthless efficiency. Every space station, every weapons platform, every warship in the Empire was being marked for destruction. Admiral, Captain Chen reported from his station. We're receiving surrender requests from 12 Zephyrian commanders. They're asking for terms. Elena's expression remained cold. Tell them to ask the children of Kepler 442b about terms. They'll find them in the mass graves. Yes, Admiral. The main view screen showed the surface of Zephyr Prime below them. White fires burned across the capital continent, consuming government buildings and military installations. The Terran fire moved with deliberate slowness, giving people time to evacuate but making it clear that nothing would stop its advance. High Dominator Krext was still broadcasting from his bunker, alternating between threats and desperate pleas for his own people to respond. But his communication networks were failing one by one as human viruses spread through Zephyrian computer systems. The Empire that had controlled half the galaxy was losing the ability to talk to its own worlds. Status report, Elena commanded. Hunter-killers have achieved 78% destruction of military targets in the primary sectors, came the reply from the tactical officer. Quantum viruses have infected 94% of their command networks. Terran fire deployment is proceeding on schedule across all target worlds. Elena nodded with satisfaction. 3 years of planning were paying off. While humanity had appeared to be fighting a desperate defensive war, she had been positioning assets and preparing for this moment. Every diplomatic mission, every trade agreement, every supposed retreat had been part of a larger strategy. What about the slave worlds? She asked. Liberation fleets are moving into position, the communications officer reported. We're already receiving signals from resistance groups on 15 different planets. They're ready to rise up when we give the signal. Elena activated the Galactic Communication Array again. Her voice would reach every inhabited world in this part of the galaxy. carrying a message that would change everything. "This is Admiral Elena Vasquez speaking to all free peoples and all those who would be free," she began. "The Zephyrian Empire has ruled through fear and cruelty for too long. Today, that rule ends." On the tactical display, Elena could see human ships approaching worlds that had been under Zephyrian control for decades. These weren't conquest fleets, but liberation forces carrying supplies and weapons for the enslaved populations who had been waiting for this moment. "To those who have been enslaved by the Empire," Elena continued, "humanity has not forgotten you. We remember what freedom looks like, and we're here to help you reclaim it. Rise up. Fight back. The chains of tyranny are breaking." The response was immediate and overwhelming. On world after world, slave populations began rebellions that had been planned in secret for years. Human intelligence agents, who had been posing as traitors and diplomats, revealed themselves as military advisors, helping coordinate uprisings across the galaxy. Elena's ship shook slightly as it entered Zephyr Prime's atmosphere. Below them, the capital city was in chaos. Zephyrian military forces were trying desperately to restore order, but their equipment was failing as human viruses corrupted their systems. Ground vehicles sat dead in the streets. Aircraft fell from the sky as their navigation systems crashed. "Take us to the government district," Elena ordered. "I want to see Krexith's palace burn." The Harmony's edge flew low over the burning city, its weapons tracking any remaining Zephyrian military units. But there was little resistance left. Most of their forces had either fled or surrendered as their equipment failed around them. The palace complex came into view, or what was left of it. The Terran fire had consumed the throne room where Elena had been humiliated just hours before. The white flames continued to spread, methodically destroying every symbol of Zephyrian power. "Admiral," the sensor operator called out, "we're detecting a massive underground complex beneath the palace. Heavily shielded, multiple life signs." Elena smiled coldly. "Krexith Bunker, take us down. I want to have a conversation with the High Dominator." The ship landed in the ruins of the palace courtyard, its hull reflecting the light from the burning buildings around them. Elena walked to the armory and selected a simple sidearm, checking its charge with practiced efficiency. She had been a soldier before she became a diplomat, and those skills were returning. "Admiral, let me send a squad with you," Captain Chun said nervously. "It could be dangerous down there." "The danger isn't to me," Elena replied, holstering her weapon. "Stay here and coordinate with the fleet. I'll be back shortly." Elena walked alone through the burning ruins of the palace, following her scanner toward the bunker entrance. The Terran fire had consumed the elaborate decorations and trophy halls, leaving only basic structure. The mounted heads of alien diplomats were gone. Turned to energy by the unstoppable flames, she found the bunker entrance, hidden beneath what had been the palace archives. Heavy blast doors stood partially open, damaged by the spreading fires above. Elena could hear voices echoing from within, speaking in panicked Zephyrian. The corridor beyond was filled with smoke and the sound of failing equipment. Emergency lights flickered as the bunker's power system struggled against the spreading viral infections. Elena walked deeper into the complex. Following the main passage toward the command center, she passed dozens of Zephyrian officials and military officers who were too focused on their own survival to notice a lone human walking among them. Their arrogance had blinded them even now. They still couldn't believe that the primitive humans had outmaneuvered their mighty empire. The command center was a chaos of shouting voices and flashing warning lights. High Dominator Krext stood at the center of it all, his massive form towering over his subordinates as he roared orders that no one could follow. Their communication systems were failing faster than they could repair them. Elena stepped into the room and drew her weapon in one smooth motion. The sound of the energy cell charging caused sudden silence as every head turned toward her. Hi, Dominator, she said calmly, her weapon trained on Krexith's center mass. I thought we should finish our conversation. Krex stared at her in shock, his yellow eyes wide with disbelief. How did you get in here? This bunker is impregnable. Impregnable against conventional attack, Elena agreed. But you're not facing a conventional attack. You're facing what happens when you push humanity beyond its breaking point. Around the room, Zephyrian officers were reaching for their weapons, but Elena's voice stopped them cold. I wouldn't. My ship has this entire complex targeted. 1. Signal from me, and Terran fire canisters will turn this bunker into a very brief star. Krex gestured for his people to stand down, his tactical mind finally grasping the full scope of his situation. What do you want, human? I want you to understand, Elena replied. I want you to see what you've created. Look at your tactical displays. Tell me what you see. Krexith's eyes moved to the screens around them, showing the destruction spreading across his empire. Red indicators marked destroyed military assets. Communication networks showed as failed or compromised. Entire fleets were going dark as human viruses corrupted their systems. Impossible, he whispered. The Empire controls 1,000 worlds. We have the most powerful military in the galaxy. You had the most powerful military, Elena corrected. Past tense. Right now, your forces are being systematically destroyed while slave populations rise up across your territory. Your communication networks are infected with quantum viruses. Your weapons are turning against you. Elena stepped closer, her weapon never wavering. And do you know why this is happening, High Dominator? Because you thought cruelty was strength. You thought that making others suffer proved your superiority. On the screens, new reports were coming in. Human liberation fleets were making contact with freed slave populations. Entire planets were throwing off Zephyrian rule as their oppressors found themselves unable to coordinate resistance. My daughter was a teacher, Elena said quietly. She went to Kepler 442b to help build schools for human children. Her son was 5 years old and loved to paint pictures of spaceships. Her husband grew food to feed families. Krex said nothing, his massive frame seeming to shrink under Elena's cold gaze. They never hurt anyone. They never threatened your empire. They were just building a life together on a new world. And you killed them for sport while I was traveling here to offer you peace. Elena's finger moved to the trigger of her weapon. You wanted me to see what monsters look like. Now I'm showing you what monsters look like when they're human and someone has taken everything from them. Wait. Krex raised his hands, panic finally breaking through his arrogance. This can be stopped. We can negotiate. Name your terms. Elena laughed, a sound like breaking glass. 3 days had passed since the fall of Zephyr Prime. Elena stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching as the last of the Terran fires burned themselves out across the planet's surface. The white flames had consumed every symbol of Zephyrian power before finally exhausting their fuel. Where the palace had once stood, only a perfectly smooth crater remained. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly, coordinating relief efforts across dozens of worlds. The mighty Zephyrian Empire had collapsed faster than anyone thought possible. Their communication networks were destroyed, their fleets scattered or surrendered, and their leadership either dead or hiding in bunkers like Krex. Admiral, Captain Chen reported, his voice tired but satisfied. Final casualty reports are coming in. Total Zephyrian military losses are estimated at 97%. Civilian casualties were minimal due to the warning broadcasts. Elena nodded without taking her eyes off the planet below. The systematic destruction had been precise, targeting only military assets and symbols of oppression. Unlike the Zephyrians, humanity had no taste for slaughtering innocents. And the liberation operations? 43 worlds have declared independence from the Empire, came the reply from the communication station. Slave populations on another dozen planets are still fighting, but Zephyrian resistance is collapsing everywhere. The hunter-killer swarms eliminated most of their ability to reinforce threatened positions. Elena activated the main communication array one final time. Her words would reach every corner of what had been Zephyrian space, carrying a message that would shape the future of the galaxy. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez to all peoples of the former Zephyrian Empire, she began. The reign of terror is over. Those who enslaved you are no longer able to enforce their will. You are free to choose your own destiny. Across the tactical display, she could see the results of humanity's 3-day campaign. Red zones marked areas where Zephyrian forces had been destroyed. Green zones showed worlds that had already thrown off Imperial rule. Blue indicators tracked human relief fleets delivering aid to newly liberated populations. To the former slaves of the Empire, Elena continued, humanity extends an offer of friendship and alliance. We remember what freedom looks like, and we're prepared to help you build societies based on cooperation instead of conquest. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from across the galaxy as species that had been enslaved for generations reached out to their liberators. The Kethran survivors, thought extinct, revealed they had been hiding in remote systems. The Mollusk people emerged from underground cities, where they had preserved their culture in secret. Elena watched the status reports with growing satisfaction. This was what she had really been fighting for. Not just the destruction of the Empire, but the creation of something better to replace it. Admiral, the tactical officer called out. We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. Elena accepted the connection, and the tired face of Admiral Morrison appeared on her screen. He had been her mentor before the war, the man who taught her that sometimes peace required the willingness to fight for it. Elena, he said, relief evident in his voice. The President wants a full report. The galaxy is in chaos, and every government is demanding to know what humanity's intentions are. Elena smiled for the first time in days. Tell them our intentions are simple, Admiral. We plan to do what the Zephyrians never could. Bring actual peace to this part of the galaxy. And how exactly do you plan to do that? By proving that strength doesn't have to mean domination, Elena replied. By showing that the most powerful military in the galaxy can choose to protect instead of conquer. Morrison leaned back in his chair, studying her face. Elena, what you've accomplished in 3 days is beyond anything we thought possible. But the easy part is over. Now comes the hard work of building something lasting. Elena nodded. I know. That's why I'm requesting permission to establish the Galactic Liberation Council. Every freed species gets a voice. Every world gets to choose its own path. Humanity will provide security and aid, but we won't rule. Some people back on Earth are saying we should take control, Morrison warned. After this victory, we could establish a human empire that spans the galaxy. The military has the power to enforce our will anywhere we choose. Elena's expression hardened. Then those people learn nothing from what just happened here. The moment humanity starts acting like the Zephyrians, we become what we just destroyed. That's not victory. That's failure. On the tactical display, new reports were coming in. The first interspecies cooperation agreements were being signed as former enemies worked together to rebuild damaged worlds. Human engineers were teaching alien populations how to repair systems damaged by the quantum viruses. Medical teams were treating injuries from the uprisings. Admiral, the sensor operator announced, we're detecting an incoming vessel. It's a Zephyrian design, but it's broadcasting surrender codes. Elena turned to study the contact. A single ship, approaching slowly with weapons powered down and shields lowered. Put them on screen. The view screen showed a smaller Zephyrian vessel, its hull scorched from battle damage. As Elena watched, a communication request came through. She accepted it and found herself facing a young Zephyrian officer who looked nothing like the arrogant warriors she had encountered before. "Human Admiral," the Zephyrian said, his voice shaking with exhaustion and something else, hope. "I am Commander Thyax of the vessel, Honor's End. I speak for a group of Zephyrians who never supported the Empire's methods. We wish to discuss terms for cooperation." Elena studied him carefully. "What kind of cooperation, Commander?" "Many of us joined the military to protect our people, not to enslave others," Thyax replied. "When the Empire fell, some of our commanders tried to continue the old ways. We disagreed. We seek alliance with the new order you are building." Around the bridge, Elena's crew exchanged glances. The idea of Zephyrians voluntarily seeking alliance with humanity would have been unthinkable a week ago. "What are you offering?" Elena asked. "Information about remaining Imperial holdouts," Thyax said immediately. "Locations of hidden weapons stockpiles. Help in transitioning our people to a society that doesn't depend on conquest." He paused. "And our ships and crews, if you'll have us." Elena was quiet for a long moment, thinking. This was the test of everything she had been preaching about cooperation and redemption. It would be easy to reject the Zephyrians, to make them pay for their species' crimes. But that would make her no better than those she had defeated. "Commander Thyax," she said finally, "welcome to the Galactic Liberation Council. Your first assignment will be helping us locate and free any remaining slave populations in your former territory." The relief on Thyax's face was visible even across species lines. "Thank you, Admiral. You will not regret this decision." As the transmission ended, Elena turned to face her crew. She could see the questions in their eyes, the uncertainty about trusting former enemies. "Some of you are wondering if I'm making a mistake," she said. "If we can really trust people whose government just finished massacring human civilians." She gestured to the tactical display, showing the growing cooperation between former enemies across the galaxy. The Zephyrians who committed those atrocities are dead or hiding in bunkers. These are different people, making different choices. If we want to build something better than what came before, we have to be willing to forgive those who seek redemption. "Admiral," Captain Chun said quietly, "Earth Command is requesting your return for debriefing. There are questions about your methods, about the extent of the destruction." Elena nodded, having expected this. "Set course for Earth. But first, transfer command of the liberation operations to Admiral Reeves. The work here isn't finished." As her ship turned toward home, Elena took one last look at the ruins of Zephyr Prime. In the distance, she could see construction ships beginning the work of rebuilding. Not as a symbol of empire, but as a monument to the price of cruelty. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks. When they arrived, Elena found herself facing a committee of politicians and military leaders who wanted explanations for what they called excessive force and unauthorized actions. Elena sat calmly in the hearing room, facing a panel of bureaucrats who had never seen combat. They questioned her decisions, her methods, her authorization for Protocol Omega. They suggested that diplomatic solutions might have been possible if she had been more patient. Finally, Elena stood up from her chair. "With respect, Senators, you're asking the wrong questions." Admiral Vasquez, the committee chairman, said sternly, "You will answer the questions put to you." "No," Elena replied simply. "You want to know if I exceeded my authority in destroying the Zephyrian Empire. You want to know if I violated diplomatic protocols by using force during a peace mission. You want to know if the destruction was proportionate to the threat." She walked to the window, looking out at Earth's blue skies. "But you should be asking whether the galaxy is safer now than it was a month ago. Whether 43 species are free now who were enslaved before. Whether the children playing in those parks outside We'll grow up in a universe where empires like the Zephyrians can never exist again. Elena turned back to face the committee. I gave the Zephyrians every chance to choose peace.